The great chamber of the Galactic Conclave stretched for miles in every direction. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds formed near the top, and the walls were made of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. This was the heart of the Valoran Dominion, the most powerful empire in the known galaxy. For 10,000 years, the Valorans had conquered world after world, bringing hundreds of species under their rule. No one had ever stopped them. No one had ever come close. High Commander Sir stood at the center of the chamber, his tall gray body wrapped in the ceremonial armor of conquest. He was the greatest military mind of his generation, responsible for bringing 37 worlds into the Dominion. His 4 eyes swept across the gathered council members with barely hidden contempt. These old fools spent their days debating and discussing, while warriors like him did the real work of expanding the empire. "Council members," Sir began, his voice echoing through the vast space. "I come before you today to present our next target for annexation. A small world in the outer spiral arm of the galaxy. The natives call it Earth." He waved his clawed hand, and a holographic image of a blue and green planet appeared above him. It was beautiful in a simple way, covered mostly in water with patches of brown and green land. White clouds swirled across its surface. As you can see, Earth is a primitive world. The dominant species calls themselves humans. They have only recently developed the technology to leave their own planet, and even then, they have only managed to reach their single moon. Their fastest ships would take years to reach the nearest star. In terms of technology, they are infants. Cyrus smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Better still, these humans are deeply divided. They have organized themselves into hundreds of separate nations that constantly fight among themselves. They argue over resources, over beliefs, over patches of land. They have even developed weapons capable of destroying their own cities, and have come close to using them against each other several times. Laughter rippled through the council chamber. The idea of a species fighting itself was amusing to the Valorans. They had long ago unified under a single ruler, and could not understand why any intelligent race would waste energy on internal conflict. "Their weapons are crude," Sith continued. "They still use chemical propulsion and explosive projectiles. Their most advanced ships are made of simple metals. They have no energy shields, no faster-than-light travel, no plasma weapons. Conquering them will be like taking food from a sleeping child." He paused for effect, letting his confidence fill the room. "I request authorization to lead a fleet of 500 ships to Earth. Within 1 month, the planet will be ours. We will gain access to their resources, their labor force, and their strategic position in that sector of space." The council members nodded to each other. It seemed like a simple matter, another easy conquest for the ever-expanding Dominion. But then a voice spoke from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. "I must object." Everyone turned to look. From the darkness emerged a figure that made even Sir feel a flicker of unease. It was Elder Chaos, the ancient archivist of the Dominion. No one knew exactly how old Chaos was. Some said he had been alive when the Dominion was first founded. His body was bent and withered, his gray skin hanging loose on his bones. But his eyes were sharp and clear, holding knowledge gathered over centuries. Chaos walked slowly toward the center of the chamber, his staff clicking against the crystal floor with each step. The council members shifted uncomfortably. The elder rarely attended these meetings, and when he did, it was never for good news. "Elder Chaos," said the council prime, an elderly female Valoran who led the governing body. "You wish to speak against this conquest?" "I do," Chaos said, his voice dry but steady. "I have come to warn you. Do not attack Earth. Do not provoke the humans." Cyrus laughed out loud. "With respect, Elder, have you seen the data? These creatures can barely reach their own moon. What possible threat could they pose to 500 Valoran warships?" Chaos turned his ancient eyes toward the High Commander. There was something in that gaze that made Cyro's laughter die in his throat. "I have spent my entire life studying the records of this galaxy," Chaos said slowly. "I have read the histories of 10,000 civilizations. I have examined the remains of species that rose and fell long before the Dominion existed. And in all my research, there is one warning that appears again and again." He raised his staff and struck it against the floor. The sound rang through the chamber like a bell. "Do not wake the humans." Silence fell over the council. Cyrus felt a chill run down his spine, though he would never admit it. "What do you mean?" the Council Prime asked. Chaos moved to the holographic display and waved his hand. The image of Earth disappeared, replaced by ancient documents, star maps, and fragments of alien writing. "These are records I have collected over the centuries," he explained. "They come from species that no longer exist, civilizations that vanished thousands of years ago, and many of them contain references to Earth and its inhabitants." He pointed to a section of alien text. "This is from the Kathrani, a species that controlled much of this galaxy before the Dominion rose. They were powerful and advanced. Their empire lasted for 50,000 years, and then quite suddenly, they disappeared." "What happened to them?" a council member asked. "No one knows for certain, but in their final records, there is a reference to a blue world and a species of impossible fury. The Kithani wrote that they had made a terrible mistake, that they had awakened something that should have been left alone." Chaos showed more records. The Vorath Collective, the Cathari Empire, the Children of the Burning Star. All of them at different points in history seemed to have encountered Earth. All of them left warnings, and all of them are now extinct. Sith stepped forward, his patience wearing thin. "These are fragments and legends, Elder. Fairy tales from dead civilizations. You cannot expect us to abandon a conquest because of ghost stories." Chaos turned to face him directly. "Let me tell you what I have learned about humans, High Commander. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them constantly. Their planet has ice ages that cover entire continents. It has predators with claws and teeth designed to tear flesh. It has diseases that can wipe out millions. The very ground shakes beneath them, and mountains explode with fire." He paused, letting his words sink in, and yet humans survived, not by being the strongest or the fastest, but by being the most stubborn. They refused to die. When the cold came, they wrapped themselves in the skins of dead animals and built fires. When predators hunted them, they hunted the predators back. When diseases struck, they learned to heal. When the ground shook, they rebuilt, again and again and again. For hundreds of thousands of years, Chaos walked closer to Sira until they were face to face. You see their internal conflicts as weakness. High Commander, you believe that because they fight among themselves, they will be easy to conquer. But I see something different. I see a species that has been practicing war for their entire existence. Every human alive today is descended from warriors who survived conflict after conflict. War is not something they fear. It is something they understand better than any species in this galaxy." Sir held the Elder's gaze without flinching. "And yet they have never faced an enemy like us. Their primitive weapons cannot scratch our shields. Their tiny ships cannot challenge our fleet. Whatever threats they faced on their own world, they have never faced the Valoran Dominion. That is precisely what concerns me," Chaos said softly. "You are about to show humans that there are threats beyond their world. You are about to give them a reason to stop fighting each other and start fighting you. You are about to unite them." He turned to address the entire council. "I have studied the psychology of humans in great detail. They are a contradictory species. They can show great kindness and terrible cruelty. They create beautiful art and devastating weapons. They dream of peace and prepare constantly for war. But there is one trait that defines them above all others." Chaos's voice grew grave. "When humans face extinction, they do not surrender. They do not negotiate. They do not accept defeat. Something in their very nature refuses to die. And when they decide to fight, truly fight, they become capable of things that no other species in this galaxy can match." The Council Prime leaned forward. "Such as they sacrifice," Chaos said simply. "Other species fight to survive. Humans fight to ensure that their enemies do not survive. They will burn their own cities if it means burning yours as well. They will poison their own land if it means denying it to invaders. They will send their children into battle knowing they will not return if it means their grandchildren might live free." He gestured at the holographic display of Earth. "Right now, humans are fighting each other with weapons that can destroy cities in a single blast. They have thousands of these weapons pointed at each other, ready to fire at any moment. Think about that, Council. They would rather have the ability to destroy themselves than be defenseless. What does that tell you about their nature? Sir had heard enough. It tells me they are insane, he said dismissively. And insanity is not a substitute for technology. Elder, I respect your knowledge, but you have spent too long reading ancient texts. The reality is simple. We have 500 warships with plasma cannons, energy shields, and faster-than-light engines. They have chemical rockets and explosive missiles. This is not a war. It is pest control. Several council members murmured in agreement. Chaos's warnings were interesting, but they could not outweigh the obvious facts. Earth was primitive. The Dominion was advanced. The outcome was inevitable. The Council Prime called for a vote, all in favor of authorizing the conquest of Earth. Hands rose throughout the chamber. The vote was overwhelming. The conquest is approved. The Council Prime announced, High Commander Sith, you will lead the fleet to Earth. Bring this world into the Dominion. Sith bowed his head in acceptance, a satisfied smile on his face. Chaos stood silent for a long moment. Then he turned and began walking toward the chamber's exit. His staff clicked slowly against the floor. Elder Chaos, the Council Prime called out. Do you have anything else to say? Chaos stopped, but did not turn around. I will say only this, he replied, his voice carrying through the vast chamber. In all my centuries of study, I have seen one pattern repeat itself countless times. Powerful empires grow arrogant. They believe their strength makes them invincible, and then they encounter something they do not understand, something that does not follow their rules, and they fall. He resumed walking toward the exit. The humans have a saying, Council, let sleeping dogs lie. It means that some things are better left undisturbed. You are about to disturb something that has been sleeping for a very long time. When it wakes, do not say, I did not warn you. The great doors closed behind him, and Elder Chaos disappeared into the shadows. Sir watched him go, then turned back to the council with a confident expression. The elder means well, but he has grown fearful in his old age. I will depart for Earth within the week. You will have your new colony within the month. The council members applauded. It would be a glorious conquest. They were sure of it. In his private chambers that night, Sir reviewed the intelligence reports on Earth one more time. He studied the humans' primitive spacecraft, their simple weapons, their divided nations. Everything confirmed what he already knew. This would be the easiest conquest of his career. But as he was about to sleep, Chaos's words echoed in his mind. They sacrifice. Sir pushed the thought away. It was foolishness. No species, no matter how stubborn, could stand against the Dominion. The humans would learn their place, just like every other conquered race. He closed his eyes and dreamed of victory. Across the galaxy, on a small blue world, 3 billion humans went about their daily lives. They worked in offices and factories. They raised their children. They argued about politics and sports. They laughed and cried and loved and hated. They had no idea that a fleet of 500 warships was being prepared to enslave or destroy them. But deep in secret facilities around the world, in underground bunkers and classified laboratories, there were those who suspected that humanity was not alone in the universe. They had been preparing quietly and carefully for a day they hoped would never come. When the stars darkened with alien ships, humanity would not be completely surprised. And when they learned what the invaders wanted, when they understood that surrender meant slavery or death, something very old and very dangerous would waken the hearts of 3 billion people. The Valorans were coming to Earth. They had no idea what they were about to unleash. The Valoran Armada emerged from faster than light, traveled just beyond Earth's moon. 500 warships, each one the size of a small city, arranged themselves in perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed with dark metal, and their weapons glowed with barely contained energy. It was the largest fleet ever assembled for a single conquest, and High Commander Cyrath stood at the center of it all, looking down at the blue planet below. Beautiful, he murmured to himself, and soon it will be ours. His second-in-command, a younger officer named Vareth, approached with a data tablet. Hi, Commander. Our scans are complete. The planet has approximately 8 billion inhabitants. Their largest population centers are concentrated on the continental land masses. We have identified their major military installations and communication networks. And their defenses, Sir asked. Primitive, as expected. They have satellites in orbit, but nothing that can threaten our ships. Their ground-based weapons use chemical explosives and nuclear reactions, powerful by their standards. But our shields can withstand anything they throw at us. Cirith nodded with satisfaction. Begin the broadcast. Let them know their new masters have arrived. The Valoran communication systems activated, overriding every television, radio, and internet connection on Earth simultaneously. Across the planet, billions of humans stopped what they were doing as their screens flickered and a terrifying image appeared. Sir's gray face filled the screens, his 4 eyes staring coldly at humanity. "People of Earth," he began, speaking through universal translators that rendered his words in every human language. "I am High Commander Seth of the Valoran Dominion. Your world is now under our control. Resistance is not only futile, but will result in the complete destruction of your species." He paused, letting fear spread across the planet. "Our demands are simple. You will surrender unconditionally. You will provide tribute in the form of raw materials and resources, and you will submit 30% of your population for labor, conscription, and service to the Dominion." In homes and offices, in schools and hospitals, humans watched with a mixture of terror and disbelief. Many thought it was some kind of elaborate hoax, but the ships were visible now. Dark shapes blocking out the stars, clearly real. "You have 72 hours to comply," Sith continued. "If you refuse, we will begin systematic bombardment of your major cities. If you attempt to resist, we will show no mercy. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your ships cannot challenge us. Accept your fate and live, or fight and die. The choice is yours." The broadcast ended. Cyrus leaned back in his command chair, pleased with himself. Now we wait. 3 days and this planet will kneel. But something unexpected began to happen on Earth. In the first hours after the broadcast, chaos reigned as Sir had predicted. There was panic in the streets, rioting in some cities, and leaders around the world scrambled to respond to a threat no one had ever imagined. Military forces went on high alert, though everyone knew their weapons were useless against the alien fleet. But then slowly at first and then faster, something changed. The fighting stopped. Not just the panic in the streets, but the larger conflicts as well. Wars that had raged for years suddenly paused. Enemies who had pointed weapons at each other for generations lowered them. Political rivals who had spent careers attacking each other reached out to cooperate. In the United Nations, an emergency session was called. Every nation sent representatives. And for the first time in human history, there was no arguing, no positioning, no political games. There was only one question: how do we survive this? The answer came from an unexpected place. Deep beneath a mountain in the American Southwest, there was a facility that officially did not exist. It had been built in the 1960 seconds during the height of human fears about alien contact. For decades, it had been staffed by scientists and military personnel who prepared for a day everyone hoped would never come. That day had arrived. General Sarah Chen, the facility's commander, stood before a wall of screens showing the alien fleet. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, and she had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. "What do we have?" she asked her team. A scientist named Dr. James Morrison stepped forward. "We've been analyzing their ships since they arrived. Their technology is incredibly advanced, far beyond anything we can match. Their shields appear to be some kind of energy field that can absorb or deflect any projectile or explosive we can throw at them. So we can't hurt them," Chen said flatly. "Not directly, no. But," Morrison hesitated. "Speak freely, Doctor. We don't have time for hesitation. There may be ways to hurt them indirectly. If we can get them out of their ships onto the ground, they become vulnerable. Our scans show their soldiers wear armor, but it's designed to protect against energy weapons, not the kind of kinetic force our weapons deliver." Chen considered this. "They want 30% of our population as slaves. That means they'll need to land eventually. They can't control 8 billion people from orbit." "Exactly. And there's something else." Morrison pulled up a new display. "Their communication suggests they expect us to surrender quickly. They've done this before to dozens of other worlds. Their entire strategy is based on the assumption that any rational species will submit when faced with overwhelming force. A grim smile crossed Chen's face. Then they don't know humans very well. Over the next 72 hours, humanity did something that had never happened before in its entire history. Nations shared their most secret weapons and technologies. Enemies became allies overnight. Every resource, every scientist, every soldier was dedicated to a single purpose. They weren't preparing to surrender. They were preparing to fight. But they were also preparing something else, a trap. When the deadline arrived, Sir waited confidently for the surrender message. Instead, he received coordinates in the American desert and a simple message. You wanted to meet humanity? Come down and meet us properly. Sir was amused. The arrogance of these creatures was almost admirable. They actually thought they could challenge him. It's obviously a trap, Ver warned. Of course it is, Sir agreed. But what kind of trap could primitives possibly set for us? We'll send a ground force, crush whatever resistance they've assembled, and make an example of them. After that, the rest of the planet will surrender quickly enough. He ordered 50,000 soldiers to the surface, the largest ground force he had ever deployed. The transport ships descended through Earth's atmosphere, landing in the empty desert where the humans had indicated. The Valoran soldiers spread out across the sandy terrain, their weapons ready. But there was nothing there, just rocks and sand and empty sky. The commanding officer reported back to Cyrith. High Commander, there's no one here. The area is completely deserted. Sir frowned. Search the perimeter. They must be hiding somewhere. The soldiers fanned out, scanning the desert with their advanced sensors. Nothing. Not a single human anywhere nearby. Then the ground began to shake. At first, the Valorans thought it was an earthquake, but the shaking grew stronger, and a terrible rumbling sound filled the air. And then they saw it rising from the horizon in every direction. Walls of fire. The humans had buried nuclear weapons beneath the desert. Dozens of them arranged in a perfect circle around the landing zone. They had invited the Valorans to this exact spot, knowing it was already marked for destruction. The commanding officer barely had time to scream before the nuclear fires consumed everything. Aboard his flagship, Sir watched in disbelief as 50,000 of his soldiers were vaporized in an instant. The desert where they had landed was now a glowing crater of radioactive glass. They destroyed their own land, Varith stammered. They poisoned their own soil just to kill our soldiers. Sir stood frozen, his 4 eyes wide with shock. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever done anything like this. When faced with superior force, civilizations surrendered or fled. They didn't sacrifice their own territory. They didn't turn their world into a weapon. A new message arrived from Earth. A single sentence. That was just to get your attention. Would you like to discuss terms now? Sir's shock turned to rage. These insects had killed 50,000 Valoran warriors. 50,000. Such an insult could not go unpunished. Forget capture, he growled. Forget labor conscription. We will burn this world until nothing remains. We begin orbital bombardment of their largest cities. Show them what happens when you defy the Dominion. Ver hesitated. High Commander, our orders were to capture the planet intact. If we destroy too much, our orders have changed. Sira interrupted, his voice cold with fury. This species cannot be allowed to exist. They are too dangerous. We will exterminate them and take whatever resources survive. The Valoran fleet moved into attack formation. 500 warships positioned themselves over Earth's major population centers, their weapons charging with devastating energy. On Earth, people looked up at the darkening sky and knew what was coming. There was no way to stop it, no shield that could protect them. The aliens were going to rain fire from above, and millions would die. But instead of despair, something else spread through the human population, something harder than fear: defiance. If they were going to die, they would die fighting. If their cities were going to burn, they would make sure the enemy paid for every inch of ground. The nuclear trap had shown them something important. The aliens could be hurt. They could be killed. Their technology was superior, but they were not invincible. The first plasma beams fell on Tokyo. The city burned. Millions of lives lost in moments. The destruction was beyond anything humans had ever witnessed. Buildings vaporized, streets melted. A metropolis that had stood for centuries was reduced to ash in minutes. Then Beijing, then Moscow, then New York, then London. The Valorans watched from orbit as humanity's greatest cities were destroyed. Surely now they would surrender. Surely now they would understand the futility of resistance. But the surrender message never came. Instead, something rose from the smoke and flames of the ruined cities. Something the Valorans had not expected. Ships, human ships. They were crude and ugly. Nothing like the elegant Valoran vessels. They looked like they had been welded together from scrap metal in desperation. But they flew, climbing through the atmosphere on pillars of fire, heading straight for the alien fleet. Impossible, Barath whispered. They were supposed to be primitive. Where did these ships come from? They came from secret programs that every major nation had been running for decades. Black-budget projects hidden from the public, preparing for a threat that might never come. Ships built in underground hangars, armed with every weapon humanity could devise. Crewed by volunteers who knew they probably would not survive, the Battle of Earth had begun. The first human ships reached the Valorian fleet and opened fire. Their weapons were primitive compared to plasma cannons, just missiles and kinetic projectiles. But there were so many of them, and they kept coming and coming. Most of the missiles bounced harmlessly off Valoran shields, but occasionally, one found a weakness, a spot where multiple hits had weakened the energy field. And when human weapons hit Valoran metal, they did damage. The first Valoran ship exploded, torn apart by a barrage of missiles that should never have been able to touch it. The humans watching from below cheered even as their cities burned. Sir ordered his fleet to destroy the human ships. It should have been easy. Valoran targeting systems were far superior, and their weapons were devastating. Human ships died by the dozens, blown apart before they could even get close. But for every human ship that fell, 2 more rose to take its place. And the pilots didn't retreat. They didn't run. When their weapons were empty, they aimed their ships directly at Valoran vessels and accelerated. They turned themselves into weapons. The first suicide ram took out a Valoran cruiser, the human pilot driving his damaged ship straight into the enemy's bridge. The explosion killed thousands of Valorans and sent the cruiser spiraling down into Earth's atmosphere. Ver stared at the tactical display, unable to process what he was seeing. They're deliberately dying. They're killing themselves to hurt us. I can see that. Sai snapped. Destroy them. Destroy all of them. But the humans kept coming. From every continent, from hidden bases around the world, ships rose to meet the invaders. They died in terrible numbers. 3 or 4 human ships lost for every Valoran vessel damaged, but they never stopped. A captured human pilot was brought to Ciri's flagship for interrogation. She was young. Her face burned from radiation exposure, one arm hanging useless at her side. But her eyes showed no fear. Why do you fight? Sir demanded. You cannot win. Your ships are inferior. Your weapons are primitive. Every hour, thousands of your people die while we lose only hundreds. Why do you continue? The pilot smiled, blood on her teeth. You think we're fighting to win? She said, her voice but steady. We're not fighting to win. We're fighting to make sure the galaxy remembers the cost of coming for Earth. We're fighting so that 1,000 years from now, whatever species finds your records will think twice before attacking humans. She leaned forward, her eyes burning with fierce determination. We're writing a warning in your blood, and we'll keep writing it until there's not a single human left to hold the pen. Sir stared at her, and for the first time in his long career of conquest, he felt something he had never experienced before: fear. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He had faced enemies with advanced technology and vast armies, but he had never faced anything like this. The humans didn't fight like any other species. They didn't calculate odds or measure losses. They simply refused to stop. The pilot was taken away, but her words echoed in Sira's mind. He walked to the viewport and looked down at Earth. The planet was burning in a dozen places, great plumes of smoke rising from the ruins of its cities by any rational measure. The humans were losing badly. Their casualties were catastrophic. Their infrastructure was being destroyed. And yet they kept fighting. Sir thought of Elder Chaos and his warnings. He thought of the ancient records, the extinct civilizations, the repeated message across thousands of years. Do not wake the humans. He was beginning to understand these creatures were not fighting a war. They were fighting extinction. And somewhere in their evolutionary history, They had learned that extinction could be delayed, even avoided, if you were willing to pay any price at all. Sir made a decision that had never been made in the history of the Valorian Dominion. He opened a channel to the Galactic Conclave. "This is High Commander Scythe. I need reinforcements. Send everything you can spare." There was a long pause before the response came. "High Commander, you have 500 ships. You're attacking a primitive world. How can you possibly need reinforcements?" Sir watched another human ship slam into a Valorian cruiser, taking both vessels down in flames. "Because I was wrong," he said quietly. "We all were. This is not a primitive world. This is something else entirely. And if we don't finish this quickly, I'm not sure we can finish it at all." The battle continued to rage around Earth. Millions died on both sides, and humanity, burning but unbroken, kept fighting through the fire. The warning had been ignored. Now the Valorans were learning its meaning the hard way. 6 months had passed since the Valorans first appeared in Earth's sky. Half a year of constant war, of cities burning and ships falling, of death on a scale humanity had never imagined. The numbers were terrible beyond comprehension. Over 2 billion humans had died, either from orbital bombardment, ground combat, or the chaos and starvation that followed the destruction of civilization's infrastructure. And yet, humanity still fought. High Commander Scythe stood in the war room of his flagship, staring at holographic maps that showed Earth's surface. The planet looked wounded, great scars of destruction cutting across its continents. Dozens of major cities had been reduced to rubble. The human governments had collapsed, their capitals destroyed, their leaders dead or scattered. By every measure that mattered to military strategy, Earth should have surrendered months ago. Any rational species would have accepted defeat by now. The losses were too great, the odds too impossible, but the humans refused to be rational. "Report," Sith commanded. Ver stepped forward, his face showing the exhaustion that all Valoran officers now carried. The war that was supposed to last 1 month had dragged on endlessly, and there was no sign of it ending. "Our fleet has been reduced to 412 ships," Fareth said. "We've lost 88 vessels since the invasion began. Most were destroyed by suicide attacks, or the humans' increasingly effective ground-based missiles, and the reinforcements I requested. Another 200 ships are on their way. They should arrive within the week." Sir nodded, but his expression was grim. He had started with 500 ships against a planet with no space fleet. Now he needed 700 just to maintain control of the orbital space. "What about the ground situation?" he asked. Veroth hesitated before answering. "We control approximately 30% of the planet's surface, mostly areas that we've pacified through heavy bombardment, but the humans have regrouped in the remaining territories. They've established new command structures, new supply lines, new weapons factories." He pulled up a tactical display showing enemy positions. "They're building ships faster than we expected. Not just the crude vessels from the first weeks of the war. These are improved designs, incorporating technology they've captured, or reverse-engineered from our downed ships. Their weapons are becoming more effective. Their shields, while still primitive, are getting stronger." Sir studied the display with growing unease. "How is this possible? We've destroyed their cities, their factories, their universities. Where are they getting the resources to build all this?" "From everywhere," Barth said. "They've converted every remaining factory to war production. They're mining raw materials with hand tools if they have to. They're training pilots in simulators built from scavenged equipment. Their entire surviving population has mobilized for the war effort." He paused, then added quietly, "Even their children are involved. We've captured resistance fighters as young as 12 years old. They're not fighting directly, but they're working in factories, carrying messages, helping wounded soldiers. Their entire species has become a war machine." Sir thought about what Verith was describing. 8 billion humans before the war, 2 billion dead, 6 billion remaining, and all of them working toward one goal, the destruction of the Valoran invaders. It was unprecedented. In all the Dominion's history, no conquered species had ever shown this level of resistance. Most civilizations had a breaking point, a level of suffering that would make them surrender. The humans didn't seem to have one. "There's something else," Ver said. "Something I think you need to see." He changed the display to show a city in what had once been Canada. The city was mostly destroyed, But humans had built a new settlement in its ruins, a maze of underground tunnels and fortified buildings. We captured this city 3 weeks ago, Farth explained. We called it New Toronto in our records. The humans who survived the bombardment were rounded up for labor conscription, as per our original plans, and Sir prompted. They killed every soldier we sent to guard them. Sir's 4 eyes narrowed. How we disarmed them. We took their weapons. They made new ones. Verath's voice was flat, as if he still couldn't quite believe what he was reporting. Kitchen knives, sharpened pieces of metal, clubs made from broken furniture, chemical mixtures from cleaning supplies that burned through our soldiers' armor. He pulled up footage from a surviving camera. It showed a corridor in a human building filled with chaos. Valorian soldiers were fighting hand-to-hand against a mob of humans. The humans were poorly armed, many of them injured, some barely able to stand. But they kept coming, climbing over the bodies of the fallen to reach their enemies. They organized the uprising using hand signals and whispered codes. Ver continued, "We had no warning. One moment everything was quiet, and the next 20,000 humans were attacking simultaneously across the entire city. The footage showed a human woman, middle-aged and thin from hunger, driving a piece of broken glass into the neck joint of a Valoran soldier's armor. The soldier fell and other humans swarmed over him, tearing at his armor with their bare hands. Our soldiers reported that the humans were smiling," Veroth said quietly. "Even as they died, even as our weapons cut them down, they were smiling. One of our lieutenants sent a final transmission before he was killed. He said, 'They just keep coming. We killed hundreds, thousands. They just keep coming. They're smiling. Why are they smiling?'" Sir watched the footage in silence. The battle in New Toronto had lasted for 18 hours. When it ended, every Valoran soldier in the city was dead. The humans had suffered terrible losses, but they had won. "With kitchen knives and broken glass, pull our forces back from all occupied cities," Sir ordered. "We cannot control territory with ground troops. The humans are too unpredictable." Ver nodded. "The same conclusion I came to. We must win this war from orbit. We must destroy their capacity to fight without ever setting foot on their world." It was the only rational strategy. But it meant abandoning the original plan entirely. There would be no labor conscription, no resource extraction. The war against Earth had become something else. It had become a battle of annihilation. On Earth, humanity knew this too. They saw the Valoran ground forces retreating, saw the fleet repositioning for continued bombardment. They understood what was coming, and they prepared accordingly. In a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, the surviving leaders of Earth's nations held their last unified meeting. General Sarah Chen, who had become the de facto military commander of humanity's forces, stood before a wall of screens, showing the positions of both fleets. "The enemy has given up on occupation," she announced. "They're going to try to destroy us from orbit, systematically bombing every settlement until nothing is left." The faces around the table were grim but determined. Presidents and generals, scientists and engineers, all of them had lost family and friends in the war. All of them had been pushed beyond exhaustion. None of them were willing to surrender. "What are our options?" asked the former president of Russia. A tired man with gray hair and haunted eyes, Chen pulled up a new display. "We've been working on something. A project that combines everything we've learned from captured Valoran technology, with everything our best minds can design." The display showed ships, but not like the crude vessels that had fought in the first months of the war. These were sleeker, more advanced, not as elegant as Valoran ships, but clearly a step forward. "We call it the Phoenix Fleet," Chen said. 57 ships built in secret in facilities around the world. Each one carries weapons that can actually penetrate Valoran shields based on reverse-engineered technology from downed enemy ships. 57 ships against over 400, the Chinese representative said. "And they have reinforcements coming." "I know the numbers," Chen replied, "but these ships are better than anything we've put into space before. And more importantly, our pilots are better than anything the Valorans have faced." She looked around the table, meeting each pair of eyes. "Our people have been fighting this war for 6 months. They've learned to kill aliens with kitchen knives and homemade explosives. They've flown broken ships into the middle of enemy fleets. They've done things that should be impossible, simply because they refuse to accept failure. Chen's voice grew hard with determination. The Valorans think they understand war. They don't. They've conquered civilizations that surrendered when the odds turned against them. They've never fought an enemy that doesn't know how to quit. We're going to show them what that means. She outlined her battle plan. It was desperate, almost suicidal, but it was the only chance they had. 3 days later, the Phoenix fleet launched. The 57 human ships rose from secret bases around the world, climbing through the atmosphere in a coordinated assault. The Valorans detected them immediately and moved to intercept. More suicide attacks, sir, watching the tactical display. Haven't they learned? Destroy them. But these ships were different. When Valoran weapons fired, the human ships evaded with unexpected skill. When plasma bolts struck their shields, the shields held longer than they should have. And when the human ships returned fire, their weapons punched through Valoran defenses with deadly accuracy. The first Valoran cruiser died in minutes, torn apart by missiles that knew exactly where to strike. Then another, and another. Sir watched in disbelief as his numerical advantage began to shrink. The humans weren't just fighting, they were winning individual engagements. Their ships worked together with perfect coordination, covering each other, concentrating fire on damaged enemies, retreating when overwhelmed, only to strike again from a different angle. How? Barth demanded. How are they doing this? The answer was simple, though the Valorans wouldn't understand it until much later. The human pilots had spent months studying Valoran tactics, learning their patterns, identifying their weaknesses. They had trained in simulators until they could fly in their sleep. They had analyzed every battle of the war, every victory and defeat, and incorporated those lessons into their strategies. But more than that, they had something the Valorans lacked: desperation. Every human pilot knew that if they failed, their species would be destroyed. There was no surrender, no retreat, no second chance. They fought with the focused fury of people who had nothing to lose and everything to protect. The battle raged for hours. Human ships died, but so did Valoran ships. The exchange rate, which had always favored the aliens, began to even out. For every human vessel lost, a Valoran vessel fell as well. When the Phoenix fleet finally retreated, leaving behind the wreckage of 17 of their own ships. They had destroyed 31 Valoran vessels. It was the first clear human victory of the war. On Earth, people who had been hiding in bunkers and ruins heard the news. For the first time in 6 months, there was hope. Real hope. The enemy could be beaten. Scythe received the casualty reports with cold fury. 31 ships lost. 31. Against primitives who hadn't even reached their own moon when the war began. The reinforcements, he said to Vareth. When do they arrive? 2 more days, Vareth replied. Contact the Conclave. Tell them we need more. Tell them. Sir paused, struggling with the words. Tell them that Earth is a greater threat than we anticipated. Much greater. On Theron Prime, the Galactic Conclave received Sir's message with alarm. A primitive world had destroyed 88 Valoran ships. It seemed impossible, and yet, the evidence was undeniable. Elder Chaos stood before the council once again, his ancient face showing no satisfaction, only weariness. You were warned, he said simply. I told you what humans were capable of. I told you they would not surrender. I told you they would sacrifice everything rather than submit. The Council Prime leaned forward. What do you suggest we do now, Elder? Chaos was silent for a long moment. I suggest you consider a possibility that no one wants to discuss. The possibility that we cannot win this war. That every ship we send to Earth will only delay the inevitable. That's absurd. A council member objected. We have thousands of ships across the Dominion. Earth has what? A few hundred at most? For now, Chaos agreed. But think about what you've seen. 6 months ago, humans had no space fleet at all. Now they have ships that can match ours. They've gone from chemical rockets to energy shields in half a year. What will they be capable of in another 6 months? In a year? In 10 years? He gestured at the reports from Earth. These creatures learn faster than any species we've ever encountered. They adapt. They improvise. Every weapon we use against them, they find a way to counter. Every tactic we employ, they develop a response. And they never, ever stop trying. The council chamber was silent. There is an old Valoran saying. Chaos continued. Never wake a sleeping predator. We have done worse than that. We have not only woken the humans, we have shown them that there are threats beyond their world. We have given them a reason to develop technology they would have taken centuries to discover on their own. He turned to face the council directly. In trying to conquer Earth, we may have created the very thing we feared, a species that will not stop until either they are destroyed or we are back on Earth. General Chen stood among the wreckage of a destroyed city. Looking up at the stars, somewhere up there, the Valoran fleet was licking its wounds and preparing for the next assault. Somewhere beyond them, reinforcements were on their way. The war was far from over. But something had changed. For 6 months, humanity had been fighting for survival, hoping only to delay the inevitable. Now, for the first time, they were fighting to win. Chen's communications officer approached. "General, we've received word from our intelligence division. They've been monitoring Valoran communications. The enemy is requesting more reinforcements." "A lot more." Chen allowed herself a small smile. "Good. That means we're hurting them." "There's more," the officer continued. "Our scientists have made a breakthrough. The captured Valoran technology has given them ideas. They think they can develop faster than light travel within the next few months." Chen's smile faded into something harder, something colder. "Then the war won't stay in our solar system for long," she said quietly. "Eventually, we'll take it to them." She looked back up at the stars, at the distant points of light that had seemed so unreachable just a year ago. They came here to conquer us, to enslave us, to destroy us. They had no idea what they were starting. And now, they're going to learn what happens when you give humans a reason to reach for the stars. The next phase of the war was about to begin, and humanity was just getting started. 1 year had passed since the first Valorian ships appeared over Earth. 12 months of fire and blood, of death on a scale that would have broken any other species. The human population had fallen from 8 billion to less than 4 billion. Half the species wiped out in a single year of war. And yet, humanity was stronger than ever. The Phoenix fleet had grown from 57 ships to over 300. Human factories, rebuilt from the ashes of destroyed cities, worked day and night producing weapons, armor, and spacecraft. Scientists who had once competed for research grants now worked together in underground laboratories, pushing the boundaries of physics to develop new technologies. And they had finally achieved what once seemed impossible, faster than light travel. The first human ship to break the light barrier was called the Defiance. It was not an elegant vessel. It was ugly and practical, built for war rather than exploration. But when it activated its prototype FTL drive and vanished from Earth orbit, appearing seconds later on the far side of the moon, a cheer went up that could be heard around the world. Humanity was no longer trapped. The galaxy was now within reach, but the war at Earth continued. The Valorans had brought in reinforcements, swelling their fleet to over 600 ships. They had learned from their early mistakes, adapting their tactics to counter human strategies. The battles in orbit had become brutal grinding matches. With both sides taking heavy losses, High Commander Sur had changed over the year. The confident conqueror who had dismissed Elder Chaos's warnings was gone. In his place stood a tired, haunted officer who had watched thousands of his soldiers die against an enemy that simply would not surrender. "Report," he said, the word mechanical from endless repetition. Varath, equally exhausted, pulled up the tactical display. "Human fleet currently numbers approximately 312 combat vessels. Our fleet stands at 574, after last week's engagement. Their technology continuing to advance. Their weapons are now nearly equal to ours in effectiveness. Their shields can withstand several direct hits from our plasma cannons and their tactics." Ver shook his head. "They're innovative in ways we can't predict. Every battle they try something new." Sir stared at the display. The numbers still favored the Dominion, but the gap was closing. A year ago, he would have laughed at the idea of humans matching Valoran technology. Now it seemed not just possible, but inevitable. "Has there been any word from the Conclave?" he asked. "Yes, they're concerned. Reports of our losses have spread throughout the Dominion. Other species are starting to take notice." This was what Sir feared most. The Valoran Dominion ruled through the perception of invincibility. 100 conquered species submitted because they believed resistance was futile. If they began to think otherwise, what are they seeing? Sith asked. Vareth pulled up a new display showing footage that had been broadcast across the Dominion's networks. Human battles, human victories, human ships ramming into Valoran vessels, human soldiers fighting with impossible determination. This footage has been circulating for months, Ver explained. At first, it was seen as entertainment, a curiosity. Look at the primitives fighting back against their inevitable conquest. But as the war dragged on, the tone changed. Species that have been conquered for centuries are watching humans resist. And they're asking questions. What questions? Questions like, if humans can fight the Dominion with no experience and primitive technology, what could we do with the knowledge we've gained under Valoran rule? Questions like, if we rose up together, would the Dominion have enough ships to stop us all? Sir felt a chill run down his spine. This was exactly what Elder Chaos had warned about. Humans weren't just fighting a war. They were inspiring revolution across the galaxy. On a dozen conquered worlds, the same scenes played out in secret gatherings. The Kathrani watched footage of human pilots flying damaged ships into Valoran cruisers, sacrificing themselves to take down the enemy. They remembered their own resistance, crushed 5,000 years ago, and wondered if things might have been different. The Vorath, a species known for their mathematical minds, calculated the odds of a successful rebellion. For centuries, the numbers had always favored submission. But now, with the Dominion's fleet tied up at Earth, the equations were changing. The Centauri, artists and musicians who had been forbidden from creating anything except propaganda for their masters, began composing songs in secret. Songs about Earth, songs about resistance, songs about freedom, and the children of the burning star. An ancient species who had nearly been driven to extinction by the Dominion, watched the humans fight, and felt something they had almost forgotten: hope. On a small space station orbiting a gas giant, representatives from 12 conquered species met in secret. It was an enormous risk. If the Valorans discovered this gathering, everyone present would be executed for treason. But some risks were worth taking. "We've all seen the footage," said the Cathan representative. A tall insectoid being with wings folded against its back. "The humans have held out for a year. They've destroyed hundreds of Valoran ships. They've developed technology that rivals our masters, and they show no signs of surrendering." "More than that," added the Vorith delegate, a small, furry creature with large eyes. "They've achieved faster than light travel. Our sources confirm that human ships have been seen outside their solar system for the first time. They're not just defending anymore. They're exploring. The question is," said the Cathari artist, her voice like music even in normal conversation, "what do we do about it?" The room fell silent. Everyone knew what they wanted to do, but wanting and doing were very different things. "If we rebel and fail, the Dominion will crush us utterly," the Vorith said. "They've done it before. Entire species have been exterminated for far less. But if we don't act, we remain slaves forever." The Kithrani replied, "We've been watching others fight our battles for a year. How long can we continue to do nothing while humans die for a freedom that should be ours as well?" The debate continued for hours. Fear argued against hope. Caution argued against courage. But in the end, a decision was reached. They would reach out to the humans. The message was sent through a network of smugglers and spies, bouncing through relay stations across the galaxy to avoid Valoran detection. It was simple and direct. "To the people of Earth, we are the conquered species of the Valoran Dominion. We have watched your war with admiration and hope. We offer our support, our knowledge, and our alliance. Together, we can end the tyranny that has oppressed us all. Please respond." On Earth, the message arrived at a communications array that had been hastily built on the ruins of New York City. The technicians who received it stared at their screens in disbelief. General Chen, one of them, called out, "You need to see this." Chen read the message 3 times before she allowed herself to believe it. Allies. Real allies from inside the enemy's own empire. This changed everything. She composed a response carefully, knowing that it would be one of the most important messages in human history. "To the conquered peoples of the Valoran Dominion, we receive your message with gratitude and brotherhood. We did not ask for this war, but we will see it through to the end. We fight not just for Earth, but for all who suffer under tyranny. Send us what you can. We will use it well. And when the time comes, we will fight alongside you. The Dominion's days are numbered. This is our promise. Humanity stands with you. The alliance was formed in secret. Information and resources flowing between Earth and the subject worlds of the Dominion. The conquered species shared what they knew about Valoran technology, tactics, and weaknesses. They provided star maps, access codes, and intelligence about fleet movements. In return, humans shared something even more valuable. They shared their defiance. Training videos showed human soldiers how to fight against superior enemies. Strategy documents explained how to organize resistance cells, how to sabotage infrastructure, how to survive under occupation, and underlying all of it was a simple message that resonated across every species. You are not beaten until you choose to be beaten. As long as you refuse to surrender, as long as you keep fighting, you cannot be truly conquered. The Dominion rules through fear. Show them that you are not afraid, and their power begins to crumble. On Valoran-controlled worlds, small acts of resistance began to multiply. Factory workers slowed their production. Transportation systems experienced mysterious breakdowns. Supplies intended for the fleet at Earth were delayed or lost. Nothing was dramatic enough to trigger retaliation, but the cumulative effect was significant. And then humans arrived. The first human ship to reach a conquered world was the Defiance, the same vessel that had pioneered faster-than-light travel. It dropped out of hyperspace in orbit around a Kathrani colony. Appearing without warning in the middle of a Valoran patrol, the Valoran ships immediately opened fire. But the Defiance was faster and more maneuverable than they expected. It dodged their weapons, returned fire with devastating accuracy, and destroyed 2 patrol vessels before slipping back into hyperspace. It was a hit-and-run attack over in minutes, but its impact was enormous. Humans had come. The legends, the stories, the footage they had watched for a year had been fascinating, but distant. Now it was real. Humans were not just defending their own world anymore. They were taking the fight to the Dominion on the Kathrani colony. Crowds gathered in the streets. The Valoran garrison tried to disperse them, but the mood had shifted. People who had been afraid to speak now shouted their defiance. The fear that had kept them obedient for centuries was cracking. Similar scenes played out across the Dominion as human ships appeared and disappeared, striking Valoran targets and vanishing before retaliation could come. Each attack was small, more symbolic than strategic, but symbolism mattered. The galaxy was watching Earth. Now Earth was watching back. High Commander Sir received the reports with growing dread. The war was spreading beyond his control. What had begun as a simple conquest had become something much larger, much more dangerous. "We need to end this," he told the Conclave in an emergency transmission. "We need to concentrate everything we have and crush Earth before the rebellion spreads further and leave our other territories undefended," the Council Prime demanded. "There are already uprisings on 3 worlds. If we pull our fleets to Earth, we could lose the entire Dominion." It was an impossible situation. Fight the humans and lose the Empire. Protect the Empire and let the humans grow stronger. Every option led to disaster. Elder Chaos, watching the argument from the shadows, spoke up for the final time. "There is one option you have not considered," he said. The council turned to look at him. "Peace," Chaos said simply. "End the war. Withdraw from Earth. Negotiate with the humans." The reaction was immediate and furious. Peace with primitives. After all the blood that had been shed, it was unthinkable. We would look weak. The Council Prime objected. Every conquered species would see it as an invitation to rebel. "They are already rebelling," Chaos pointed out, "and they will continue to do so, as long as humans show them it is possible. But if we make peace, if we recognize humans as equals rather than enemies, we change the equation. The humans would have no reason to support rebellions. The conquered species would have no human allies to inspire them." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We made a mistake attacking Earth. We woke something that should have been left sleeping. Now we must live with the consequences. We can spend the next century fighting a war that will destroy the Dominion, or we can swallow our pride and make a different choice." The council debated for days. In the end, they rejected Chaos's proposal. The Dominion would not surrender. The Dominion would not show weakness. The war would continue until Earth was destroyed. No matter the cost. Chaos nodded sadly and left the chamber. He had done what he could. The rest was out of his hands. On Earth, General Chen received word of the Council's decision through their spy networks. "They're not going to stop," she told her commanders. "They're going to keep throwing ships at us until one of us is destroyed. Then we need to make sure it's them," said Admiral Rodriguez, the commander of the Phoenix Fleet. "Our new ships are nearly ready. Another month, and we'll have enough force to take the offensive." Chen nodded slowly. For a year, humanity had been fighting defensively, protecting their world against invasion. But they had always known that defense alone would not win the war. Eventually, they would need to take the fight to the enemy. The time was almost here. She looked out at the stars, at the galaxy that had seemed so unreachable just 2 years ago. So much had changed. So much had been lost. But humanity had gained something as well. Purpose, unity, the knowledge that they were not alone in their fight. "Contact our allies," she ordered. "Tell them to prepare. We're going to end this war, and when we do, we're going to make sure no one ever forgets the cost of threatening Earth." The final phase was about to begin. 2 years had passed since the first Valorant ships appeared over Earth. 2 years of war that had transformed humanity from a species that had barely reached its own moon into a force that threatened the greatest empire in the galaxy. The cost had been beyond imagination. 4 billion humans had died. Cities that had stood for centuries were now radioactive craters. The planet itself was scarred, its climate disrupted by years of bombardment and nuclear fire. But humanity had survived, and they had grown strong. The human fleet now numbered over 500 ships built in secret facilities around the world and on the moon. Each vessel was a product of desperation and genius, combining captured Valorant technology with human innovation. They were not elegant, but they were deadly, and they were no longer alone. Ships from 12 formerly conquered species had joined the human fleet, forming the first true alliance against the Valoran Dominion. The Kathrani brought their experience with Valoran tactics. The Vorath contributed their mathematical minds for strategic planning. The Cathari provided communication technology that could not be intercepted. And the children of the Burning Star, who had the most reason to hate the Dominion, brought a fury that matched humanity's own. Together, they called themselves the Liberation Fleet. General Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the humanity's flagship, the Unconquered, looking at a holographic display that showed the entire galaxy. 2 years ago, this view would have been science fiction. Now it was reality. "Status report," she ordered. Admiral Rodriguez, her second in command, stepped forward. "All ships are in position. 512 human vessels, 347 allied ships. Total combat strength, 859 ships." Chen nodded. It was the largest fleet ever assembled against the Dominion, but it would still be outnumbered. The Valorans had concentrated over 1,000 ships at their homeworld, Theron Prime, knowing that the humans would eventually come, and our intelligence confirmed. The Dominion fleet is arranged in a defensive sphere around Theon Prime. They're expecting us to attack in a single wave, trying to break through their lines, which is exactly what we won't do. Chen turned to the Allied commanders who had joined her on the bridge. "Today, we show the galaxy what happens when free peoples stand together. Today, we end the Dominion." The battle plan had been months in the making. It was not a simple assault. It was a coordinated attack on multiple fronts, designed to exploit every weakness the Alliance had discovered during the war. The fleet jumped to hyperspace. When they emerged at Theron Prime, the Valoran defenders were ready. Over 1,000 warships arranged in perfect formation, their weapons charged and shields raised. At their center was the flagship of High Commander Sur, the largest ship in the Valoran fleet. Syra watched the approaching enemy fleet with grim determination. He had been fighting humans for 2 years. He had lost friends, soldiers, and most of his original fleet. But he would not lose this battle. The future of the Dominion depended on it. "All ships, prepare to engage," he commanded. "This is where we make our stand." The Liberation Fleet spread out as it approached, forming into smaller groups that seemed random but were actually carefully planned. The Valorans, seeing the apparent disorder, pressed forward to attack what they assumed were isolated targets. It was a trap. The scattered human groups were not random. They were bait, drawing Valoran ships out of their defensive formation. And as the Dominion fleet spread out to pursue them, the real attack began. A second wave of ships dropped out of hyperspace behind the Valoran lines. They were smaller vessels, fast and heavily armed, piloted by crews who had volunteered for the most dangerous mission of the war. Their target was not the enemy fleet, but the supply stations and communication arrays that supported it. Within minutes, the Valorans found themselves cut off from their supplies and their ability to coordinate. Ships that had been working together suddenly found themselves fighting alone, unable to communicate with their commanders. "Regroup," Cyrus shouted, but his orders were lost in the chaos of jammed communications. The Liberation fleet struck hard. Human ships fighting alongside their alien allies tore into the confused Valoran formation. The Kathrani targeted engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. The Vorith ships coordinated attacks with mathematical perfection, and the humans did what they had always done. They fought like they had nothing to lose. The Battle of Theron Prime lasted 18 hours. It was the bloodiest engagement in galactic history, with ships dying by the hundreds on both sides. The space around the Valoran homeworld became a graveyard of burning wreckage and floating debris. But slowly, inevitably, the Liberation fleet began to win. Valoran ships fell faster than they could be replaced. Their formation, once impenetrable, was now shattered into dozens of isolated groups, fighting desperately for survival. And as each group was destroyed, the others lost hope. Sir watched from his bridge as his fleet was torn apart around him. The tactical display showed hundreds of his ships destroyed, hundreds more damaged or disabled. The Liberation fleet had taken heavy losses as well, but they kept coming, relentless as the tide. "Hi, Commander," Verth said, his voice hollow with shock. "We've lost. We need to surrender." Sir said nothing for a long moment. Surrender. In 10,000 years, no Valoran force had ever surrendered. The very concept was alien to their culture. But as he watched another group of his ships die under human weapons, he understood that the alternative was worse. Total annihilation, the end of everything his people had built. "Send the signal," he said quietly. "All ships, cease fire. We surrender." The guns fell silent. For a long moment, nothing moved. Ships that had been locked in combat drifted apart, their crews stunned by the sudden peace. Then, slowly, the Liberation fleet began to regroup around the defeated Dominion. General Chen received word of the surrender, with no celebration. Too many had died for joy, but there was satisfaction. Cold and fierce, they had done it. They had won. Her shuttle crossed the distance to Ceres' flagship, accompanied by an honor guard of human marines. The Valoran vessel was damaged, its hull scarred by battle, but still functional. She walked through its corridors, flanked by her soldiers, past Valoran crew members who stared at her with a mixture of fear and disbelief. She found Sith in his command center, standing amid the wreckage of his dreams. He looked older than his years, broken in ways that went beyond physical wounds. "Hi, Commander, sir," Chen said, her voice flat. "Your fleet is defeated. Your empire is falling. Do you have anything to say?" Cyrus turned to face her. This small human woman, with her scarred face and prosthetic arm, had done what no enemy had ever accomplished. She had brought the Dominion to its knees. "Your elder warned you," Chen said before he could speak. "You should have listened." Sir nodded slowly. "Yes, we should have. But we were arrogant. We thought our technology made us invincible. We did not understand that true strength comes from something else entirely." He looked at her with something almost like respect. "What happens now?" Chen's expression did not soften. "The Dominion is finished. Your conquered species will be freed. Your fleet will be dismantled. Your worlds will be governed by councils representing all the people you enslaved." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. But you personally will not see it. You ordered the deaths of 4 billion humans. You burned our cities. You murdered our children. There will be no prison, no exile, no mercy." Sir accepted this with a slow nod. He had expected nothing less. Humans were many things, but they were not forgiving. "Before you carry out my sentence," he said, "may I send one final message to the Conclave, to all the worlds that watch this war?" Chen considered for a moment, then nodded. Sir activated the broadcast system. knowing that his words would be heard across the galaxy. This is High Commander Sir of the Valorian Dominion. I speak now to all who are watching, to my own people, to the species we conquered, to all the worlds that have watched this war unfold. He paused, gathering his thoughts. 2 years ago, we attacked a small blue world in the outer spiral arm of the galaxy. We believed it would be an easy conquest. The inhabitants were primitive. Their technology was crude. They fought among themselves constantly. We thought they were nothing. His voice grew heavier. We were wrong. We were so terribly wrong. We thought we were conquering a primitive world. We were declaring war on the universe's most successful predator. We woke something that should have been left sleeping. And now we pay the price. He looked directly at the recording device. To all who hear this message, I offer a warning, the same warning that our elder gave us, which we foolishly ignored. Do not attack Earth. Do not threaten humanity. Do not give them a reason to turn their eyes toward your world. They are friendly, these humans. They are capable of kindness and cooperation. They will trade with you, work with you, perhaps even become your allies. But if you threaten them, if you try to conquer them, if you give them a reason to fight, he shook his head slowly.